Thank you, John. Right, I think a few people from Ruakura will be joining soon. So I guess if they have issues, they will have to come to my office and sit in here, and we can do it from here. Thanks everybody for joining. I'm not sure how long this is going to be, but I'll finish in time. This is about the lessons we learned from a cross-case analysis. And I'd just like to acknowledge the inputs from several of my research colleagues, Paula Blackett, Nicola Park, Sam Beechner, Dave Gray, Janet Reed, and Andy Dunningham. This presentation is based on a presentation I gave before. I've made some changes after that based on conversations I've had, and I take full responsibility for those changes. And well, let's start. Can you just give us an idea of where you're located? I think, John, we've already done this, haven't we?
Oh, to some degree we have, but let's see how people go. So where are you located today? North Island, South Island, or in my case, the Big Island?
Also called the
just giving
Island.
people. Yes, that's right. So just getting people interacting. Okay, I can see most people have voted there. So I'll just close that off and share the results. So there we go, Neils. You know that most of the audience are with you on the North Island. Some brave Southerners, and I can't vote, unfortunately, but I am representing Australia today.
So you're the only Aussie
Yes.
participating. Right, so let me just get this back on here. There you go. Well, thanks for that, New Zealanders and John. Let me just quickly debrief with you on the case studies that we looked at. We looked at three, essentially. We also had a forestry case study in there, but that dropped off the list because it was done a bit differently to the rest, and we ran with these three. INCAF,
sorry, Neil, but we're not actually seeing your presentation. You might have to reload it back up. The poll must have bumped it off the system.
Good. So how do I do that?
So just click on the blue button at the bottom of the screen and then show my application. So it may be paused.
It's not doing anything, John, when I click on it.
Try hitting the escape key.
Nope.
Don't you love it when this happens? So
no, I don't.
Okay, so let me. Oh, that's really interesting. No, no, but for some reason you've. So okay, so the system still says that you're the presenter. So I will change it back to me, and then I'll change it back to you, and then that might jog it back into working again. Okay, so have you got the little pop-up box saying share your screen?
Yep.
Great.
Do I go to that and open the presentation, do I?
That's right, yep. There we go. Yes, now we see your title slide. Thank you very much.
Good. And the second one?
Yep.
All right, good. So let's get on with the exposed cases. First of all, INCAF, that's in the dairy sector. This was simply a learning package for vets and consultants, which would help them to diagnose, systemic reproduction problems and to find solutions. This is quite a complicated problem, they tell me, and this learning package would then help people to actually diagnose better, and hopefully they would get the INCAF rates up. LEP was in the sheep and beef sector. This is a resource assessment and management planning tool, which was also made available on the Beef and Lamb New Zealand website. And I understand now, this is a few years later now, things are going great guns for them. They're getting lots of responses to the particular tool. And then Apple Futures. This was sort of a technology package of guidelines for producing apples that have low residues, pest and insecticide residues in it. And this was quite a big program, very successful program in the end. And we compared across these three learn some lessons for co-innovation. How did we do this? We held 2 interactive workshops. This was about 7 months ago, just before Christmas last year. We had great discussions, good dialogue going there. We struggled a bit with the terminology. We used a particular framework called Vitterick and Hickert, which has got 7 functions and 4 structures and intersections between those. As you know, when you do interdisciplinary work, one of the big obstacles is actually to speak the same language and to use the same terms. So we did spend quite a bit of time during those workshops on sorting out what things meant. It went really well, those workshops, in my view. We took some notes. Sam Beechner helped us with audio recording, retyping things. So we had a great database to work from. And then, you know, we had to make sense of all those things. We designed, I designed a summative table for these different things, compared and contrasted, wrote out the observations, used the Delphi technique, you know, send these things to participants, got feedback from them. That went very well as well. And then in February this year, I did a presentation. We got feedback from a wider group of primary innovation participants. And based on the feedback I got there, I changed the presentation from the original one. I changed some of the slides and some of the lessons I reworded just to make it a bit clearer. And that was the method we used to get to where we are today with these lessons. One thing I think we need to be clear on, so we all understand what it means, is the term co-innovation. And for this presentation and for this analysis, it means working together to find solutions or a solution to solve a particular problem or to address an issue. But it also means translating an idea or invention into something that people value and or are willing to pay for. So this is not exclusive, and some of the literature you will find that the first bullet there is the main focus. And other literature you will find the second one is the main focus, and we decided to put them together and say we don't want to be exclusive, which helped with the analysis. It always helps when you're quite clear about what you're on about. Can I just check with you, are you okay with how we view co-innovation, and maybe are you okay with the case studies? If you signal to me that you're not, I'll gladly talk about it a bit more. Can you just raise your hand and say that you're okay? If you don't raise your hand, I'll assume that you're not. So
that's great. So yeah, I can see. So 4 out of the 7 people have raised their hand. 5 out of 7 have raised their hand.
Okay. So let's say we're good. Yeah, if it's 5 out of 7, I think we can continue. I think people understand where we're coming from.
Yeah, sounds good.
Good, thank you. And at this point, I'd just like to remind you, if you have any questions, John has showed you before. He has showed you where you can put them in. Just write them up. There will come a time when I'll pause a bit after the 4th lesson just to answer those questions quickly before we go ahead. So lesson number 1. As we talked about these different cases, it became quite clear that motive is really important, or it was important to understand when you try to analyze this. Because the reason why people participate, or why the project is there, or the program, actually determines what happens in there, and it strongly influences the network composition, actor network composition. That means all those parties and people that sort of participate in the network, and also its functioning. So if you understand why people participate, it makes it much clearer why they're doing what they're doing. We also noted that even though a threat or a crisis provided motivation for people to do the project or to participate, this particular crisis or threat did not guarantee successful co-innovation. So A crisis can be quite motivating, but it doesn't mean if there's a crisis that co-innovation will work in the end. So the motive is really, really important when you analyze these sorts of projects for co-innovation. The second lesson is that there was where there was no or very little network failure, it helped co-innovation. So this network failure included things like some of the actors who should be there are not participating. They haven't been consulted, or they chose not to participate. They may have been ignored without knowing that. In one of the cases they didn't think about involving some of these actors. Poor communication. People use the same terms, but they mean different things. People don't say things that they should have said. They withhold information. Poor participation. One or two of the cases, participants popped in and out whenever it pleased them, so they couldn't make good progress. Lack of commitment, power imbalances, those sorts of things. All those things are network failures, and if only a few of these things were present or know of them, it actually really helped the co-innovation process. That was the second lesson. The third one is about who participates and legitimacy. So what I call here essential actors, what does that mean? Essential actors are actors that must be in the network to actually make it work. If they're not there, or one or two of them are not there, co-innovation will never work, because they drive the process. They really have to be present. You have to hear what they have to say, otherwise co-innovation will fail. Scaling up is another term that I'm using here. That simply means sort of going back to what actually caused the problem, and this is going back into the wider system. This could be policies that influence people to behave in certain ways. Hence, they won't change their behaviors unless you change the policy, or other things. So what happens is, what happened was, when the essential actors actually ascribed legitimacy to co-innovation, it actually helped to solve the problem. The key lesson here is that essential actors must give legitimacy to the co-innovation process, or it's likely to fail. I'm not sure I explained this very well, but we'll soon see from your questions. The fourth lesson has got to do with trust and a partnership approach. It became quite clear that if the actors in the network worked as partners and they trusted each other, it really helped the co-innovation process. Now, partnership approach has got to do with risks and rewards, where the parties involved in this network actually share the risks and the rewards equally. It worked really well. In cases where there was sort of high rewards but no risks, it didn't work that well, or the other way around. If there's high risk and no rewards, there was low levels of trust, and things just didn't work out the way it could have. So trust, partnership approach, those things are really important in terms of making co-innovation a success. At this point, I think I'll just pause for a few minutes and see whether we've had any questions. John?
At this stage, no. There haven't been any questions or comments.
Oh, good. Which means I can probably continue.
Most likely.
I explained it really well, or I missed the boat totally. We'll probably find out later. Good. All right, so what was lesson number 5? This has got to do with resourcing the co-innovation process. It became quite clear that if you have adequate resources, it can help things to be successful, like in the Apple Futures case. They had adequate resourcing and they used it well, and things went well. But in the case of INCAR, for instance, there were enough resources. People could have spent more time. I think the process went too fast. they had enough resources, but it did not guarantee success. The point I guess I make is that you've got to resource it adequately, but that doesn't mean that it will work if you have all the resources you need. You need other things as well, like I just said in the other cases. And that picture there says it doesn't matter how many resources you have, if you don't know how to use them, they will never be enough. I think we find in research in particular that researchers want to dig deeper and deeper, and they want more and more resource, and that doesn't mean that the solution will be any better, really. Which brings us to the next point, which is lesson number 6. Resource mobilization was optimized when it targeted good enough and not perfect solutions. In Apple Futures, when they fixed the problem, they stopped. In the other cases, they kept going, trying to fix the problem by digging a bit deeper or doing things too fast. The point is that if it's good enough, it's good enough. You don't have to find a perfect solution. If it works, it works. Don't waste more resources than required to get the job done. Lesson number 7, and this is the last one. I changed it slightly from what I had in my previous slides, which I guess most of you probably have seen before. The optimum speed of co-innovation of the process was determined by the pace of the slowest essential actor in the innovation network. Those actors who are crucial to finding solution and making it work, the pace that they can afford to go at, that is the pace that's the right pace for the program. So the lesson is the slowest essential actor in the innovation network actually determines the speed of it. You can't go faster than that because you lose them, or if you go slower, they will get irritated and maybe get out of the process as well. And those are the 7 lessons that we picked from the cross-case analysis. Just a brief summary. The first one is that motive is really important. Why are we doing the project? Why do I participate in the project? And we've got to ask it of all the participants. And once you understand that, it's very, very useful to understand what you see and why things are happening the way they are. Network failure stifles co-innovation. I think intuitively we know this is true. And this has got to do with some people not participating, or they don't communicate well, those sorts of things. And then in terms of essential actors, remember those are those actors in the network without whom the project will never work or the co-innovation will never work. They have to legitimize co-innovation. That's really important. And they actually determine the pace of the co-innovation process. And the fourth point, a partnership approach and trust are really, really essential for co-innovation. And you should resource co-innovation well, but aim for good enough, not perfect solutions, because good enough will be good enough. That's just a brief summary, John, of where I got to. And let's see whether people now have comments or questions.
Yes, they do. So obviously they've been warming up their fingers. So the first one for you, Neels, is can you elaborate about scaling up, which you talked about earlier?
About scaling up?
Yeah.
Let me just go back to scaling up so we can see the wording there. Scaling up, the way it's used here means that people actually try to fix the causes of the problem in the system. So they don't just try to fix, jump to a quick solution, but they go back into the wider system and they try to fix those problems or address them at that level and not just go to immediate solutions. That's scaling up, the way we used it.
That's good. And can you tell us about how do essential actors relate to the scaling up plan?
What we're saying is that if the essential actors give legitimacy, if they say, well, yes, we think this process works for us, it's legitimate, it's the right thing to do, then they are willing to go back into the wider system and try to fix the problem from there. That's
sure.
what I'm trying to say.
Good. And can I ask, how do you determine who is an essential actor and who isn't?
Oh, that's a good question. What you can do is you can do a network analysis and see who's in there and find out who's not there. Essential means that, for example, in our dairy industry, if a key player is not there, it won't work. And my guess would be in New Zealand, it would be Dairy New Zealand, who controls a lot of the extension activities that happen. If they're not part of discussions around particular problems, I think it's likely not to work, and in that case they will be an essential actor. I don't have a particular list to tick off in terms of identifying it.
Okay, that's good, thank you. Another question here, are there other things other than key actors that can influence the legitimacy, or is key actors the most important?
Oh, that's a good question. I do not know really. I would guess that if the essential actors, or the key actors as the question called it, if they ascribe legitimacy, it's probably good enough. I don't know, I'll have to think about that. Thanks for the question.
That's good. Okay, another one here. So the speed of the slowest essential actor, if they are much slower than the rest of the essential actors, does this risk losing the other essential actors? And also, what if you had a time frame in which to deliver on that is much faster than the pace of the slowest key actor?
Can you just repeat that, the second part?
Sure. What if you have a time frame which to deliver on that is much faster than the pace of that slowest key actor?
Yeah. That seems to be a problem all the time, isn't it? We find the same, when we do our social research, that reality moves quicker than the process can allow. I think you'll have to strike a balance there. As it goes with these things, if you can't do it fast enough, you just simply cannot. Another problem I think we often see is that you run out of money before the process is over, so you can't do it. And I don't have answers really to these problems. It's just a matter, I think, of balancing it up and maybe encouraging the slowest essential actors to speed up a bit.
Okay, good. And Neels, you're talking at the beginning about that motive was important. So how do you ask about the motive?
How do you ask about the motive?
Do you explicitly ask that, or how do you determine what the motive of the different actors is?
Yeah, I think ways of doing it is to ask people about, or participants in the network, ask them about their expectations, what they want to see come out of their participation, and you can ask them, what's in it for them, when they participate, and usually it will line up with what they said their expectations are. But I don't see a problem with asking people, what's in it for them and why are they there? What do they expect to get out of it? And what are they willing to put into it?
Okay, sounds good. So at the moment, that's all the questions that people have asked.
Good. Yeah, I think I probably didn't answer all the questions adequately, and seeing that most people are from New Zealand, we can probably continue the conversation more face-to-face or email. I'm very happy to do that after the session or over the next few days if there's a requirement for that.
That's good, and it looks as though there might still be a comment coming in that's just being typed. So while that's happening, Neels, on behalf of the audience, I'd like to thank you for the time and effort you've put into the presentation. Personally, because I'm across the ditch, I find this a lovely way of just catching up with what's been happening with the Primary Innovation Project and being able to learn, you know, from the different areas across the project. So I've certainly appreciated it today. And here we go, here's the comment. So the forestry case study, you could argue, was focused on building trust and how to participate. Would you agree with that, Neil?
I certainly think that was part of the forestry case study. Yes, it certainly was. I wouldn't say that was the main thing because I do not know, but from our conversations, I think yep, it played a big part in that particular case.
Yes, certainly trust is a very important factor in a lot of our work, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah.
Good. Well, Niels, we always aim to make these webinars short and sharp and a quick way for people to catch up with what's been happening. So there are no further questions. So I think I'll close it off there. So thank you, Niels, for your presentation, and thank you for the almost 10 people who came along today. No one needed to jump on an aeroplane and wait at the airport. So webinars are just a great way for us to connect. It's also been recorded, and we'll send out the link to that later on.
Okay. Thanks, John, and thanks for making it possible for us to actually engage in this sort of activity. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Neil. So as you may know, I love webinars. They're just a quick and easy way for people to catch up and hear the latest news without any of us needing to travel.
Good. Thanks, buddy.
Okay, I'll close it off now. Thanks, everyone. All the best.
Bye-bye.